Hi, everybody. Welcome. If you're there, if you're not there yet, that's cool. We're going to do prison libraries and prison service with Brian today. And I'm going to just hand it over to him so he can start. Here you go.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Hasbrouck. I just graduated from library school a couple days ago, and I'm currently working at the Red Hook branch of the Brooklyn Public Library as an outreach librarian. However, for over the past year, I helped bring library services to different facilities throughout the New York City jail system. The first thing I want to go over with you is a little history. I'll explain why this is important in a second. But New York City was officially unified in 1898, which was after, as many of us know, the public library movement in America was up and running. I show this to you because since prison services in New York City are handled by the singular New York City Department of Correction, our efforts to bring library services to incarcerated persons are undoubtedly hampered by the different boroughs in their libraries. As you can see from the map, for many of you who do not live in New York City or have not worked in New York City libraries, the most famous one to you would be the one over here, the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island. And right about there-ish is the famous 42nd and 5th Library with Patience and Fortitude, the libraries. But what happens is, and I'm pointing right here, is Rikers Island, where most of those who are incarcerated, usually just on because they cannot afford bail, not because they have been found guilty, which is really important to remember. The services that are brought to them are from individuals from all three systems. And there are facilities throughout the 5 boroughs. Mostly, however, you will be kept on Rikers if you are arrested and cannot make bail or being held without bail. And that requires that many of us have to leave our home systems, if you want to call them that, to get to Rikers. So we'll go over later why that is such an issue for librarians and other people who work for the libraries when they bring services to the library. But first, I just wanted to go over some of the things that people tend to think we do and what they look like. I can tell you first, one of the things that doesn't look like is this. This, of course, is from the very famous Orange is the New Black show. That is not what most prison libraries in New York City look like. And they definitely don't look like this. Probably the most famous prison library in cinema history, the Shawshank Redemption. They typically look more like this. I was looking for another graphic, you'll have to forgive me. I couldn't find one that wasn't animated. But it is typically a mix of an individual, usually a librarian, who is pushing a book cart around. And they walk throughout the facility in terms of where incarcerated people are. Most of the books that are brought there, not to be melodramatic, are brought there on the backs of librarians and other staff. Usually I would bring a backpack with myself onto the train or subway. And I would typically have a bag with me as well. And we would fill those up with books that you, as with any person who works in a library, you start to learn the collection demands of the population you're serving. So some of the most famous authors, some of the most, well, they are famous, but some of the most high demanded authors that are in high demand were James Patterson, John Grisham, Lee Child. Books that I found when I've read John Grisham, when I found they're very easy reads and you can keep going quickly. One of the problems, however, with having certain authors being in high demand is that we don't really have much of a circulation policy. In that, I mean, if someone, our first priority, as I was told by my bosses, was always to get the books in the hands of incarcerated people. It's not to ensure that the books get back to us. So we do, when an individual finds a book on our book cart that they like, we will take down their information, and then we will follow up the next time we see them if they have the book. But frequently, much like how you might waive fines for an individual who seems to be in distress, there is no way to charge the individual if they lose the book, especially since there's so little kind of autonomy in the system. It's not like an individual has possession of the book and it's only they have that possession for, say, the week or two in between us coming back. So we tend to be very liberal with that. With that said, because most of these facilities are transitory, meaning that people have been charged and they're about to be taken to trial, they move around a lot. So even if they have the book, it becomes a challenge to get it back, right? Now I mentioned a little bit earlier where Rikers was, and real quickly, it's up here, right? And I live down here along with a number of colleagues. Getting to Rikers requires taking a subway up through the city and into Queens, and then getting onto the Q100 bus, which is the only way to get onto Rikers if you are a civilian, which is a word they love to throw around when you're there, as a heads up. But you cannot get onto that facility otherwise. Once you get there, you have to take a school bus to the different facilities on the island with your books. And usually there is a collection that's been built up by the, I was part-time, by the more full-time and permanent members of the staff. But one of the things I always told colleagues, and this is really frustrating for a number of librarians, is you have to become reactive when you're dealing with the Department of Correction, or corrections, as I always said until I was corrected. I always brought reading material for myself, because otherwise you get really frustrated. And, there's a whole discussion that can be had about whether that's purposeful or not. So once you get there, you go through security. You have to have a pass. You have to have gone to an orientation, and then you get to the facility. You bring your books. Usually, I'd say about 80 to something, 90% of people are still going to be there. And so you've hopefully been able to fulfill some of the requests that they asked. And they'll remind you, usually, if you have not, which makes you even more determined to get them. But since most of the time we're running on donations and a very limited budget, it's very difficult to get specific requests. So reader's advisory becomes super important. Although you tend to stretch it more than you would otherwise. If someone asks you, say, for a John Grisham, you can ask them what about John Grisham they like. One of the books I recommended, because we had it on the cart and we weren't going to be back for several weeks, was The Count of Monte Cristo. And what I explained to the individual was, well, he deals with criminal justice issues. The Count of Monte Cristo does in a way too. And then I explained some of the history behind Napoleon and his overthrow, more like his dethroning. And, that individual then several weeks later came back and stated how happy they were with that. That's not an always commonplace reaction, but it's something you need to do when you have limited resources. The DOC, like most militaries, is run in a paramilitary manner. There's a lot of importance placed on titles and hierarchy, and security is their most constant concern. So books will frequently have to be, I have had books challenged when I come in, but usually you're able to get them through. Urban fiction is probably the most challenged, and it's one of the most highly demanded books. Zane books is an example of that. But that influences all the decisions that are made when you're dealing with prison libraries. So that's the most common way individuals who are incarcerated get books. There's another really cool program that the Brooklyn Public Library and the New York Public Library run called Daddy and Me. And I have been privileged to work on this program. The idea is to get incarcerated, and just so everyone knows, there's a Mommy and Me program as well. But I didn't work on that program. But Daddy and Me involves having a father pick out a book we help them find an age-appropriate book, and then we record them reading it. Then they're during what they call family days, where the incarcerated individuals meet up with their family. We produce a CD with that recording along with the book to the caretaker and their child. And I can say personally, this is probably one of the most moving experiences I've been privileged to participate in. So what happens is we've had individuals come tell us they will play that CD before the child goes to sleep. And it encourages literacy, it encourages bonding between the individual and the child. And it's just a fantastic program. But it's really time intensive. You have to coordinate with everyone involved. But it is a fantastic program, and it is such an example of the great work that we do as libraries and librarians. I'm afraid I couldn't find a cool visual for this, so I'll just tell you about the program. It is called the Televisit program, and this is a program that's being rolled out. And what happens is, so as I explained earlier, getting to Rikers is an ordeal, especially if you are not getting paid to go, and especially if you have a job that does not take your personal life or any of that stuff into consideration. So what the library has done, and is kind of rolling out slowly, but hopefully it'll become more ubiquitous, is we have a TV that is then connected to another TV that is within the facility. And one of the situations I saw was a daughter, it was her birthday, and she came in with her mother, and they connected over the Televisit with the father. And it was just a great example of what we can do. But it's also great to know that that bond is being created, so that, you know, one of the things people often forget with incarcerated people is they get out. And when they get out, the surest way, I think, one of the surest ways to keep them out is to have them going home to a loving family. And I think that bond is really important. And so that Televisit program is being rolled out. If you have, I see we're coming up against the time, sorry. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I will put my contact information on the YouTube in the details section. And we would love to help anyone, and I can connect you with individuals who are running the programs if you have any questions about creating them in your system as well. So any questions, comments, suggestions, anything, I'm very open to hearing them. But that's about it. So thanks so much for listening, and I hope you learned some about prison libraries and public libraries. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. So thank you, everybody, for hanging out with our coffee break. If you want to subscribe, I don't actually have a coffee cup today, so you can click down underneath to subscribe for the next one, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for mine, which is not at all terrifying. Bye.